Hello, my name's Dave, and this talk is called A Black Man, Do You Know Who You Are? Now, I'll start with a little bit about me. I've been an atheist for 40 years, and I was led to read the Bible and actually look into human history. And I started to find a correlation between the two. So this talk is the culmination of about 3 years' worth of work. So let's begin. So when tackling a subject like this, the first thing that you'll probably hear is the word racist. Now, the thing about racism, what you ought to know is that racism is an institutionalized, systemic discrimination of a group or a person based on their skin colour. Now, when I say discrimination, it's a kind of discrimination that affects or impacts somebody's life. Being denied loans or denied jobs, whatever. I can stand and call a white person all sorts of unflattering names. I can shout at them all day, and it will not negatively impact their lives. But at the same time, a white person can get on the phone and simply hint to the police that there's a black man with a gun and I'm likely to be dead in 10 minutes. That's racism. And as you'll see throughout this presentation, the idea of black versus white or whatever, well, it isn't as cut and dry as that. So let's look at the myth that we've been living under. First myth is that before slavery, we were savages living in Africa with no history, no written history. We were just people running around the jungle, not doing anything interesting. As black people, we don't have a homeland, and we're actually incapable of civilization. It's one of the things they say about us. Another thing is that we've never ever contributed to society. They also say that we are not equipped to live in this society. We exist at the bottom strata of society because we simply aren't good at living in this world. They also say that there is no conspiracy about how the world is operating. It's just, these things happen and it's all going on naturally and unplanned. And finally, they say that the Old Testament is just a fairy tale written by uneducated people. So let's start looking at some of these myths. So again, the first one, we're all descended from primitive Africans who can't live in a civilized way. Well, it turns out that's patently untrue. Our ancestors, and we'll get into how we got there later on, but our ancestors built these amazing cities, and there's over 100 of them that have been recorded. These amazing cities in Western and Southern Africa. This one, Benin City, I know you can't see it very well, but this one, Benin City, was huge, 6,500 square kilometres. Its walls are longer than the Great Wall of China, and there was 100 times more stone in this city than the Great Pyramid of Giza. You can't see it very well from this illustration, but the colonialists who first saw these cities, did sort of these drawings to show what they look like. And these cities had wide paved streets, indoor plumbing, a sewage system, the works. Here's another city, Kumasi. Again, two-story thatched houses with upstairs toilets, so a sewage system, promenades, public squares, and exquisite architecture. That's how it was described by the people who first saw it. One interesting thing about this is that the government would work in buildings that had no sides to them, so that anybody could actually look in and see what the government were doing. That's an interesting idea, isn't it? Let's go to the next one, Timbuktu. And many people have heard of Timbuktu, but they usually associate it with somewhere way off in the middle of nowhere. Nothing interesting there. But again, there was an amazing city there, built by our ancestors, which was 5 times bigger than London. It was the richest city in the world, and they called it the Paris of the medieval world. It boasted the first university, and literally people used to come from all over the world to learn from us at this university. Again, this was at the time where in Europe they were living in huts and sticking their bottoms out of the windows and crapping in the streets. Yeah, we had cities like this. Also, people have this idea that we cannot build anything. We can't do anything of high artistic value. This is a statue built in Senegal. I don't know if you can see it at the scale, but these are cars on the road there. This is huge. The Statue of Liberty would probably come up about here next to this. So we're not incapable of doing anything artistic, and that's not quite true. So, do we lack intelligence or talent? Well, I like this quote by Einstein. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it is stupid. And this is how we've been brainwashed in this society. The education system is based on a type of intelligence, metric that is logical, sequential intelligence, and kind of memory retention. So if you can remember facts and figures and numbers and logical progressions of events, you'll do well. But our intelligence is a kind of creative intelligence, and it's not represented by the current educational system. So yes, if we are measured by an educational system that's designed for other people, then yeah, we're going to end up looking stupid or being at the lower end of the spectrum. Also, our creative abilities have been hijacked by others. In this picture on the left here, people might recognise that as Beethoven, but in actual fact, this is what Beethoven looked like. This is an engraving of Beethoven, clearly a black man, but obviously they can't paint over an engraving, but they've managed to overwrite it with paintings of Beethoven as a white person. These two people you might not recognise immediately. This is James Cameron, and in this image I should have put James Cameron and the Wachowski brothers. These people have taken credit for the Terminator franchise and the Matrix series of films. I mean, in actual fact, this is Sophia Stewart who wrote both of those, and literally they had to go to court, and she won when she settled out of court, basically admitting that she created those series, not these guys. You might also recognise this guy, Thomas Edison. He is famed for creating the light bulb. However, his invention would only burn for a couple of minutes at a time. It took this guy, Lewis Latimer, and his invention of the carbon filament to make the light bulb last anywhere near a useful life. In fact, it worked too well. There's a firehouse in New Jersey that has a light bulb that's been burning continuously for 120 years. But what they had to do was actually degrade Lewis Latimer's invention so that the bulb would burn out in a reasonable time so that people would keep buying light bulbs. Here's another one. The guy on the left here is Bass Reeves. He was actually the Lone Ranger. He was the inspiration for the Lone Ranger. This white character. And as we find out later on, the original Aboriginal Americans were our people too. So both the Lone Ranger and Tonto were our people, basically. And the process is still going on today. I don't know if any of you have seen this story, that Michael Jackson is being played by a white man. So if you imagine it in a couple of generations' time, with a kind of onslaught of this kind of brainwashing, people are just going to assume that Michael Jackson was a white man. So why are we unable to excel in this society when other people find it so easy? Is the system rigged against us? Well, you only have to look at some of the news stories that are pervading our minds today. That we're seeing that somebody like George Zimmerman can shoot a 17-year-old boy on the street with no consequences, and yet in this case, this woman called Marissa Alexander, she basically fired a warning shot in the ceiling from an abusive husband who had an injunction against him, and she was actually put in prison for 20 years. So there's a couple more examples of how the system is rigged against us.
Today we're going to figure out the difference between how people react when he tries to break into a car versus when I try to break into a car. Let's find out. Well, apparently nobody cares. I've been here for 30 minutes, and there's a cop here at one point, and he didn't even try to stop me. Let's just see what happens when Quentin gives it a try.
Turn around, put your hands behind your back.
Okay.
Put your hands behind your back. Is this your car?
So you can see there that when a white guy actually looks like he's breaking into a car, nobody takes any notice. People walk past him, even a policeman stops just briefly and then moves on. Right? Nobody cares. But as soon as a black man looks like he's breaking into his own car, right, within a couple of minutes, the police arrive with guns drawn, and literally at the end of it, you saw about 6 or 7 cops all at the scene with a guy in handcuffs. So let's have a look at the next one.
What's up, guys? SKS14 here. We're here with Warren. Hey Warren, what are we doing today?
Just go out and exercise with a rifle today.
Right on. Want to tell them a little bit about your YouTube page?
Just for educational purpose, and also find professional, respectful, and constitutional officers in the state of Oregon, and make sure we still keep our rights here pure and simple.
Right on. What's your channel called?
Mark Guardian. Officers, I'm audio recording. audio recording.
I'm audio recording as well.
Recording.
Yes, sir.
How you doing, sir?
Hey,
Howdy.
can I see your IDs?
No, sir. No.
Why not?
You guys don't have to. I'm not doing any crimes.
Okay. Any particular reason why you're carrying the AR especially around at this point?
I'm just exercising my
I
right.
understand that, but is there a reason why you're doing it?
I just want to walk around.
Of course.
He pulled out the gun. He's getting down. The gun. He's just walking up and carrying. Cop saying he has a reason to borrow this. I'm pregnant. I'm 7 months pregnant. I can't.
On the sidewalk. 7 months pregnant, cannot lay on the ground. Let you know I am audio and video recording you. That's fine. At this time.
I'm audio recording too.
I'm now laid down at gunpoint by an officer. I have done nothing wrong. I have freely open carrying my weapon. I have not been. Another unit has just pulled up to the scene. I am still at gunpoint. The other officer has drawn his weapon with on his side, holding on his sword. He is his life. And I let him know I am doing something this morning. Yeah, this is like a subject walking the street of what appears to be a state or I do not consent to any search and seizure of my property. Sir, just an accident. Is this weapon real or is it it's an AR-15. I'm not.
They're taking his weapon.
I do not take it off. I do not consent to any seizure. I will not.
He did nothing illegal. He's open carrying. They're putting him in handcuffs.
He has patted me down for weapons. He has loaded me some.
They're taking his gun. They have brought a canine.
So you can see there, when the white man walked down the road with his AR-15, one police officer turned up, just walked up to him quite casually, asking him questions. The man with the gun basically refused to give ID, and yet, the situation wasn't escalated. But a black man doing exactly the same thing, walking down the same street with the same gun, and you've got 6 police officers, a canine, drawn weapons, and the guy gets handcuffed, his weapon confiscated. Now, that's That's how the system is rigged against us. So why does black history always start with slavery? It's because they need to hide the fact that world history is our history. The Old Testament Bible is our story. So let's start looking at the Bible. So I'm going to go from the beginning. I'm just going to sort of hit a few points here. Starting with Genesis 1:1 to 2. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. Right. Well, if you look at the these first two verses in the Hebrew, the Paleo Hebrew, you'll find that the word "was" can be translated as "had become," and in just the way that those same words were used when Lot's wife was turned into a pillar of salt. It said Lot's wife had become a pillar of salt. And the words without form and void can be better translated as ruinous and desolate. So this first verse can be better translated as, in the beginning, Most High created the heavens and the earth, but the earth had become ruined and empty. That kind of tells you that the earth's history isn't covered. The earth's entire history isn't covered by the Bible. It tells that there was a global pyramid culture that was spread all over the world, and in the seabeds all over the world. The Bible only covers the final 7,000 years of Earth's history, and we're nearing the end of the first 6,000. So Genesis 1:26, and God, and right here I've got to say that the words in the Bible, God, the Lord, and Elohim, all those words were actually replaced. The name of the creators was replaced by the Jewish scribes. So in this case, in 1:26, it's using the word God, Elohim. It said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." And 1:27 goes on, "So God, Elohim, created man in his own image, male and female created he them." But in Genesis 2:7, it says the Lord God, which means it was a different entity to the one detailed in 1:26 and 7. And he formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So in the earliest creation here in 1:26, whoever were created there weren't given a breath of life and became a living soul. We have two different creations here. We go on to 2:22, and the rib which the Creator had taken from man, he made into a woman. So in 1:27, men and women were created, and it was not until 2:22 that the so-called first woman was created. So who did the creation in 1:27? Well, if you look at the word Elohim, it's plural for the word El. And when you look up in the Hebrew what the word El means, you get all these definitions. Now, when you consider Paleo-Hebrew, it's not like English where a word has one or two definite meanings. In Paleo-Hebrew, you look at all the meanings for the word, and you get the feeling of what that word means from considering all the words here. So the meaning of El is God with a little g, God-like one, mighty men, men of rank, mighty heroes, Angels, again, God with a little g, false God, demons, imaginations. Only at the end here does it say God, the one true God, Jehovah, and that's another false name, which we might get time to look into later. Mighty things of nature, strength, power. So when you consider all of those meanings, you get a picture of angels. Angels who are taken as gods, mighty men. So a hint that I'm on the right track with this is that all the angels' names, or many of the angels' names, start and end with L. Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, Raguel, and so on. So it's my contention that the angels created the first people. And those people were the Neanderthals. Now, evolution does not exist. You know, we've not found any kind of transition from one species to another in any species, especially not man. Neanderthals were a different species of human, of you know, man-like beings. Okay. And they appear to have been created before Adam. And I say that those first people were the Neanderthals. So let's look at Genesis in detail here. Well, the word Genesis, well, its root word is gene, genetics, you know, genealogy. Yeah, Genesis could have been called creations or beginnings. But it was called Genesis for a reason, because the Bible is about following one specific bloodline of humans, basically. So Adam was not the first man, as we've just shown. He was a special genetic project. And if you follow the story of Adam and Eve and the apple, it wasn't about eating an apple. It was about Satan having sex with Eve and destroying, or attempting to destroy, the bloodline. Eve had two sons from different fathers. This happens today sometimes. There have been cases where a woman has sex with two men and has, conceives twins, and one twin is a child of one father and the other twin is a child of the other. So Cain had different genetics to human. He had the serpent genes, and he was wicked. So he committed the first murder. So when he committed that murder and was cast out, he was marked with leprosy. Now, leprosy in the Bible isn't that horrible wasting disease. It's actually your skin turning white. And again, you can look back in the Old Testament, every time the word leprosy is used, it's as leprous as snow, skin turning white. And the reason I believe his skin was turned white is because he said that if I was to be cast out and somebody finds me, they'll kill me. That tells you that he would be recognised by the other people, the Neanderthals. So Cain was turned white so he wouldn't look too different from the Neanderthals. And he went ahead and took a wife among them and actually built them a city. But I'll come back to that just briefly later on, because we have some evidence that is what happened. Later on in Genesis, there's the story of the fallen angels. Genesis 6 tells how angels came down to earth, saw that the women were fine, and took wives among them. It's only one verse in Genesis, but if you look in the book of Enoch, book of Jasher, and the book of Jubilees, there's much more detail. So it's not, there's no doubt about what actually happened. The theologians will say, oh no, it's the wicked sons of Seth or something like that. No, it was angels who came down to Mount Hermon and swore a pact to take wives amongst humans. Incidentally, right now there's a UN base on Mount Hermon, exactly where they were said to have landed. And Mount Hermon is exactly 33 degrees north of the equator, and when Paris was the prime meridian, it was 33 degrees east, and 2012 miles from the equator. So interesting numbers there. The offspring of the angels and humans were called the Nephilim. These were normally considered giants. The first generation of these Nephilim were 450 foot tall. Now, that might sound a bit ridiculous, but when you look at the Greek myths, you'll find that the Titans were 450 foot tall. And if you watch the film Clash of the Titans, one of the first things you'll see is 450 foot tall giants fighting. So after the Nephilim died, their spirits had nowhere to go, so they became the demons, the evil spirits, the demonic spirits. But what happened was that when the fallen angels mixed with mankind, this corruption became so prevalent that everybody had become corrupted by them, and the world was made wicked. So let's have a look at the traits of the Nephilim seed. I'll go into these in detail, but literally there was a whole list of traits that were decidedly not human, and would have been very, very strange to the people of that time. So the first one, giantism. We still have giants walking around today. The Smithsonian and the Vatican were, over the last couple of centuries, were very thorough in hiding any evidence of giants. There were many finds of giant bones, giant skeletons, but they were quickly snapped up and covered up by the museums and especially the Smithsonian Institute. So, as I said, you can still see evidence of giantism today. And these giants are anatomically well proportioned, not like those people who are touted as giant people in the media that we're allowed to have, because they're always portrayed as people who are disabled and disfigured in some way. But as you can see, some of these giants are just well proportioned. Another trait is 6 fingers and toes. Again, we have lots and lots of evidence, and there are people around today that still have 6 fingers and toes. I believe Halle Berry has six toes. There's a lot, I think also Oprah as well, but I'm not quite sure of that one. Next trait is 2 rows of teeth, and again, very occasionally, children are born with more than 1 row of teeth. Excess body hair. Now, there are many people walking around today that, if you take off their shirt, you'll see, you'll probably get a bit of a surprise, because like this guy, he's shaved up into his neckline, but below he's a yeti. But there are a lot of people who have a lot of body hair. A tail. Now, in this culture, when a baby is born with a tail, they cut that thing off very, very quickly. But sometimes, they let them through, or they're not people who have access to the medical access to places where they can cut tails off, and you still see people walking around with tails. White skin was also one of the traits, and if you look in the Book of Enoch, it actually tells you that the Nephilim had white skin because Noah was born as an albino, and his father Lamech was frightened, and he went to his father Methuselah, and he said that he is giving birth to a strange son. He looks white-skinned, like the offspring of the angels. So pale skin isn't natural to this earth. The sun on melanated skin energizes that skin, but when it hits white skin, it damages it. I've seen, you can see on this picture, these the boils of pus basically on this child's back. But I've seen people, I've literally actually seen this, where somebody has pizza-like skin that peels off their back when it's severely burned. And these two don't look very happy at all, do they? Blue or green eyes is another trait of this bloodline. Blue eyes are a indication that they completely lack melanin. And the eyes of white people show the greatest diversity of any peoples. They could be grey, blue, green, hazel, and any shade in between. With black people, there's pretty much only one eye colour, and that's brown. Of course, you get mixtures between black and white, and so you get a bit more diversity there. Now, RH-negative blood is the most interesting part because I'll explain what RH-negative blood is. It's a blood type that is lacking a certain protein coating. And only 15% of the human population have this lack of protein coating. It's called Rh-negative. So you know of the blood types or blood groups A, B, O, AB, but you can also have this what they call the rhesus factor, which is negative or positive. As I said, most people have this protein coating on their red blood cells, so they're positive. If you don't have this protein coating, you're negative. The thing about this blood is that it's incompatible with the rest of the species. Okay, a woman who's Rh negative, conceiving a child with an Rh positive man, her blood cells will start to attack the baby as a foreign object, because literally the blood is incompatible. So the scientists don't know where this mutation came from, but it's suddenly entered the human genome. One interesting thing is that Rh-negative blood has a very high copper content, which is why the people that had this kind of blood were called blue bloods. And it's been proven that the royal family have Rh-negative blood. I think Prince Charles gave blood in the 80s, and it was revealed he was Rh-negative. And these royal families do not marry outside of their bloodlines. And indeed, they consider their divine right to rule is from the fact that they have the blood of the gods. Which gods, you have to ask. The final trait I want to look at is cunning, this type of intelligence that I mentioned before, and wickedness, psychopathy. Well, only one bloodline owns all the corporations that are destroying this earth right now. One bloodline owns all the banks, is responsible for all the poverty in the world. Only one of these bloodlines is responsible for the mass murder, genocide, and war that goes on in the world. And one bloodline owns the pharmaceutical corporations that are slowly poisoning the world. There's none of us who own these companies. So, as I started saying earlier, this corruption of the human genome was so prevalent that it had corrupted everybody, almost everybody. And the Most High looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. So he brought the flood because of that corruption. It was Noah's family alone who was still pure human. And I believe it's in the book of Jasher, you find that a week before the flood, Noah had to go and find wives for his 3 sons. And the only women that were available were corrupted ones. So the Satan's seed, the serpent seed, found its way past the flood through the offspring of the children of Noah and the corrupted wives. So, and it has to be said also that Noah's sons were all men of colour. So, if you look at Ham's descendants, and look in the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, you'll find that it says that Ham was the father of the Egyptians, the Libyans, Ethiopians, and Canaanites, but not the Negroes. Interesting. Now, there were 6-fingered giants among the Canaanites and the Egyptians and all the ites and eames of the Bible. Yeah, that shows that Ham's bloodline was corrupted by this serpent seed to a great degree. In Japheth's line, Japheth was the original inhabitant of Europe. In Japheth's line, there was at least one giant, maybe a couple more, but it was Gog or Magog were from the line of Japheth, indicating that line also was was corrupted. The only line that wasn't corrupted was Shem's. And it turns out the Negroes, us, we're of the line of Shem. Yeah, we are the Shemites, not those other people. So let's make sure that the Israelites were black. I've just explained that we're not of the line of Ham, of Shem. Moses, if you read the story in Exodus, was raised as an African prince, as well as being an African Egyptian prince, as well as being mistaken for an Egyptian at the wells of Midian. So it can't be argued anymore that the Egyptians were white, because if you imagine white people in the burning sands of Africa without sunblock, they wouldn't last very long. Okay, the Egyptians were black, and Moses was able to masquerade as the son or grandson of the Pharaoh, just after the Pharaoh had decreed that all Hebrew children were to be put to death. So the Pharaoh was fooled by Moses because he was also black. Later on in Numbers, it tells of how Moses' sister, Miriam, was turned white as a punishment, as leprous as snow. And also another telling thing was Moses had his skin turned white as a demonstration that the Most High was, it was the Most High he was talking to. You had Charlton Heston play Moses in the Ten Commandments, but funny enough, they seem to kind of leave that bit of the story out, because that wouldn't be much of a demonstration of the Most High's power to make Charlton Heston's skin turn slightly paler. So Moses looked very different from Charlton Heston. Also, if you go through the Old Testament, there are plenty of references to how the Israelites were black people. I'm not going to go through them here, but there are. This list is only some of the ones I put together. But as you read through it, you'll find lots and lots of instances. Also, there are thousands of these religious icons in Russia. Now, what happened in Europe was that the Renaissance, which is the rebirth of the white culture, was all about destroying all religious icons and repainting them in their image. But since Russia was one of the last countries to be whitenized, their religious icons escaped this whitenization process. In fact, you can go on Google and type in black Russian icons, and you'll find pretty much all the characters in the Bible depicted as black people. So this is, up until 500 years ago, this is how the people in the Bible were depicted. Now, in Shem's line, as I said, Shem's line was the human line and did not express this serpent seed until Esau was born. Now, Esau and Jacob were the sons of Isaac, and the Most High told Rebekah, their mother, that the younger one would be blessed and inherit the promise of the Creator. That is, the younger one would be the human, and the eldest one would be the offspring of the fallen angel, the throwback to the offspring of the fallen angels. So Esau was red, or white-skinned, and hairy. Hairy as in straight red hair. We know that because later on in the story, when Jacob was pretending to be Esau, he had to wear goat skins so that his father, who was blind, would believe that Jacob was Esau. So So I said Esau, as the firstborn, he expressed the serpent seed, and as prophesied, Jacob got the birthright and the blessing. Again, because he was the human line, and Esau was not. So Esau showed that he was wicked because he was angry, obviously, and warlike. He also went against his parents' wishes and married Canaanites, Hivites, and Horites, and founded his nation in a place called Mount Seir in the Caucasus Mountains, and began worshipping pagan gods. Esau became known as Edom, that's another word for red, and his offspring were the Edomites, who basically mixed with all other nations apart from the Israelite nation. So now this story actually catches up with modern discoveries. Now, if you do a search on Google with for Neanderthal DNA, you'll find the story that broke quite recently that it's been found that up to 20% Neanderthal DNA is in humans. I suspect it's much more than that, but they've made it sort of sound less important than it is. But at least 20% of Neanderthal DNA is in humans. What they forget or don't mention outright here is that it's only white people and Asians that have Neanderthal DNA. It says, basically, if you look further down in the text, that Africans do not have Neanderthal DNA. But if you look even closer, it will actually give you a bit more detail, that sub-Saharan Africans are the ones without Neanderthal DNA. And that's who we are. We are called sub-Saharan Africans, but we're not from Africa. And we'll get into that in a few minutes. But one more thing I want to say about this is there was a further news story about how scientists looking at Neanderthal bones discovered that in Neanderthal DNA itself, there was human DNA before the supposed mixing of Neanderthals and humans. So Neanderthals had human DNA in their genome. So that basically kind of backs up my idea that Cain mixed with the Neanderthals, and said he took a wife amongst them, and he passed on his DNA into Neanderthals before actually Esau started mixing with them. I didn't mention that, but the Horites who lived in Mount Seir, they were the offspring or the throwback to the Neanderthals, cave dwellers, known as troglodytes in the Bible, but that was before we had the name Neanderthal. So basically, we have a race of non-humans that are walking amongst us. White and Asian people, as I said, have Neanderthal DNA, and it's only us, sub-Saharan Negroes, that are fully human. White genetics are recessive, black genetics are dominant. White people are susceptible to harmful mutations, and we're not so much. White skin is sulfur-based, but melanated skin is based on selenium, which is a superconductor. Sulfur is an insulator. There's a marked difference between our skin types. White skin is damaged by sunlight, whereas melanated skin is energized by it. Rh negative blood has a high copper content, and Rh positive is higher in iron. Black people are physically stronger and mentally more robust, and black children develop much quicker than all other races. So, how did we become slaves? Or as I like to put it, prisoners of war. Well, we are in a blood covenant. When the Creator took us from Egypt, we entered into a covenant with the Creator. He gave us 10 commandments, laws and statutes. And basically, if you read Deuteronomy 28, it goes into detail about what would happen if we followed his laws, statutes and commandments. We'd be blessed, and we'd have a great life. We'd be the head of this world. But so the latter half of Deuteronomy 28 goes into detail about what would happen if we don't follow his laws, commandments and statutes. Deuteronomy 28:68, and the Most High shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, and there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondsmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you, or no man shall redeem you. Deuteronomy 28:49, the Most High shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Who uses the symbol of the eagle, I wonder? Deuteronomy 28:48. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Creator himself shall bring against thee, in hunger and in thirst, in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon their neck until he have destroyed thee. So yes, we certainly had a yoke of iron on their necks back in slavery. So let's see how we got there. The destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. The Romans attacked Jerusalem in 70 AD, and what happened was, and it's actually detailed in Luke 21:20, was that the Judeans, the people of Judah and Benjamin and Levi in the southern kingdom, they escaped to the mountains in Africa. They basically escaped into Africa to hide amongst the Hamites. Now, the Hamites didn't want them because they've already had their fill of them from the Exodus. So this here is a map of Africa from the 1700s. Now, one interesting thing is the Sahara Desert is actually called Kingdom of Sahara, or the desert. Now, Zara was the son of Judah, and he was one of the people who basically started colonizing that part of Africa. So, those people that was up to about 1 million people from Jerusalem went across the top of the Sahara Desert and down into the wilderness at that time, where nobody was living, which is West and Southern Africa. So we'll look at this map in detail. So again, this map was written or drawn up by the Europeans, so they could ply their trade here. But here you can see that this part is called the grain coast. So this is where they came to steal their food, steal wheat and other food. This part here is called the tooth coast. It's where they came to steal ivory. Here is called the gold coast. It's where they came to steal the gold. And this bit here is called the slave coast, where obviously they came to steal the slaves. But note here that it's actually the kingdom of Judah, or Judah. Yeah? The letter J didn't exist in the Hebrew language. So there's proof there that it was the people who were taken from West Africa were our people. It was a targeted attack on our people. In Psalms 83 it says, "For lo, thine enemies make tumult, and they that And they that hate thee have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. What it's saying there is all the nations have got together against us. And so when you hear the stories that it was Africans selling Africans, well, that's not true. Because it was Hamites, the Africans, who were selling our people, who are not Africans. They were from the Israel area, yeah, who were just staying in the wilderness of Africa, in those amazing cities that I spoke of earlier. Yeah? It was our people that were taken into slavery, being sold by Hamites and Arabs. Yeah? It wasn't our people selling our people. So this is a map, the common map of the transatlantic slave trade. And you can see how the slaves were taken to America, the West Indies and South America, and supposedly some to Europe as well. But that's not the whole story. The thing is, when the first people came to North America, they found that it was already inhabited by Aboriginal Americans, yeah, our people. In fact, they were found they were able to communicate with these people because they spoke Hebrew. And as you can see, they were our people. They were black people. Now, when you actually speak to our people, the Aboriginal Americans, there's still a few of them out there, they'll tell you that in the northwest of America were Chinese Mongol invaders who lived amongst their little tribes in the northwest. It's those people who mixed in with the white people and were given reservations and now have casinos and all that. And also the white people were able to buy Indian nationality for $5. That's where the term $5 Indian comes from. But the Aboriginal Americans were basically reclassified as black people, coloured people, Negroes, African Americans, and so were lost out of that system. Now there was another source of these slaves, because interestingly, there's more slaves in America than could be accounted for by the number of ships going from Africa to the Americas. Because it was also Europeans that were coming across as slaves. This is an essay from Benjamin Franklin. It was written in 1751. And it's complaining about how the numbers of Germans coming in were a concern to him. So if I read it out here, why should Pennsylvania, founded by the English, become a colony of aliens who will shortly be so numerous as to Germanize us instead of us anglifying them, and will never adopt our language or customs any more than they can acquire our complexion? So, at that time, the Germans had a different complexion to Benjamin Franklin. Which leads me to add one remark, that the number of purely white people in the world is proportionately very small. All Africa is black or tawny, that's brown. Asia, chiefly tawny. America, exclusive of the newcomers, wholly so. And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion, The word swarthy means black. It comes from the word schwarz. As are the Germans also. So he's saying right there that the Germans were black people. The Saxons only accepted. That means the Saxons, or the people from Bavaria, were white. Who, with the English, make up the principal body of white people on the face of the earth. So what he's saying there is that the American colonialists, the Bavarians, and the English were the only white people in the world. Yeah? So if people say that white people were doing pretty much everything, there was very few of them in 1751 when Benjamin Franklin wrote this. And he goes on to say, why increase the sons of Africa by planting them in America? So he's saying, why do we need to increase the black people when we can make America wholly white? So essentially, that's them saying that a great deal of those slaves were actually from Europe. There was another source of these slaves, and that was England, or the British Isles. So I'm going to go into a quick summary of the founding of Britain. Britain was actually founded by a Trojan prince back in 1103 BC called Brito, or Brutus, has been anglified to. He was a descendant of Zara, of the royal house of Judah. And this is a sculpture of him, one of the few that doesn't have the nose broken off. So, prior to 1103 BC, this is a map of the movements of the Israelites. It's got many different time periods on this, but what I want to show you is that one group of Israelites called the Iber moved across eastern or southern Europe and ended up in what's known as Spain and Portugal, which they named after themselves, which was the custom at the time, and they called it the Iberian Peninsula, Iberian. They were eventually chased out by the barbarians, red-headed giants, and actually escaped the Iberian Peninsula and founded another country called Hibernia. Some of them went on a little further into Scotland, what's now called Scotland, and one of the names that survived is Hebrides. So the Scottish, and especially the Irish, were black people. This is an illustration from Harper's Weekly from the 1800s, and it's showing the difference between Negro, Anglo-Teutonic, that's white people, and Irish Iberian. Okay, and you can see that the Irish Iberian face is very similar to the Negro. It's a kind of cross between the Negro and the white to make the Irish. I tell you right there that the Irish were the Iberians. In the text, you probably can't see from here, it says the Iberians are believed to have been originally an African race. Yeah? So they're telling you right there that the Irish were an African race. They weren't actually African, they were a Negro race. Yeah? It's only in 1940 that the Irish were finally accepted into the white race. So let's have a look at how this process of whitening came about.
The trouble with Scotland is that it's full of Scots. Perhaps the time has come to reinstitute an old custom. Grant them prima nocte. First night, when any common girl inhabiting their lands is married, our nobles shall have sexual rights to her on the night of her wedding. If we can't get them out, we'll breed them out.
So that's what they did. Essentially, that's one method. They would actually, if anybody got married, they would literally have a white nobleman have sex with her. So the first offspring would be a mixed child.
As you know, every Aborigine born in this state comes under my control. Notice, if you will, the half-caste child. And there are ever-increasing numbers of them. Now, what is to happen to them? Are we to allow the creation of an unwanted third race? Should the coloreds be encouraged to go back to the black? Or should they be advanced to white status and be absorbed in the white population? Now, time and again, I am asked by some white man, if I marry this colored person, will our children be black? And as Chief Protector of Aborigines, it is my responsibility to accept or reject those marriages. Here is the answer. 3 generations. Half-blood grandmother, quadroon daughter, octoroon grandson. Now, as you can see, in the 3rd generation, or 3rd cross, no trace of native origin is apparent. The continuing infiltration of white blood finally stamps out the black color. The Aboriginal has simply been bred out.
So that's the process. It only takes 3 generations to actually lose the colour, and essentially that's what they've been doing. This example was from Australia. This is the latest, one of the latest examples of them whitenising that culture. But it's been happening throughout the centuries. Saying that, it shows that not all white people are actually white people. This process of breeding out, yes, it gets rid of the colour, but it does not get rid of the DNA, the black DNA. And the elite have said time and time again that if you have 1 drop of Negro blood in you, you're a Negro. And literally this process does not get rid of the Negro blood.
Francis had a son called Isaac. Isaac had a son called Enoch. Enoch had a son called Edward. Edward had a son called Norman. And Norman had a son called Cedric, and that's me. And it's as direct as that. That's my family tree on my father's side, going back 250 years.
Historians sometimes say that there's a mystery about the disappearance of the black Georgian population that we know numbered thousands. But really the answer to that mystery is you.
Yes. We're going around in disguise, in camouflage, walking about the place, and many people don't know. But I'm glad that I know. I'm proud of that, because they're mine, and because it's my history, and I feel sorry for people who don't know.
So, as you can see there, not all white people are actually white people. Yeah? And similarly, some black people aren't actually black people, aren't actually Negroes. This isn't about race, it's about DNA, it's about species. And they're still using the Willie Lynch method by dividing us on skin colour and skin shade. But as I said, this isn't a racist issue. This is about different species of humans and non-humans. So this brings me to King James. King James of the King James Bible. He was a black man. As you can see from this engraving that comes out of the King James 1611 Bible, he's clearly depicted black here, as is his wife, Queen Anne of Denmark, sporting an afro right there. So again, this is another engraving, and you can't whitewash an engraving. This is another engraving of King James, the 6th of Scotland and the 1st of England. Again, he was a black man who was a descendant of King David, of the line of Judah. He had the Bible translated as faithfully as possible, and he united the tribes of Judah that were in England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, and France actually. And the Roman Catholic Church tried their best to assassinate him, and that was Guy Fawkes and the Gunpowder Plot. I thought it was about getting rid of Holland. No, it was about getting rid of the Black King. The Union Jack that Britain flies is actually the reunification of Jacob. That's what it means. The word British means, it's a Hebrew word that means man of the covenant. It's the covenant between the Creator and the Hebrews. Great Britain is the land that was promised Abraham, where it said in Genesis that Abraham will be the father of a great nation. Great Britain is the only country that has that appellation. But it's no longer the land of the covenant, because the people aren't there anymore. It's now England, or Angleland, or Angel Land. So King James, this is a bogus painting of him. This is a Renaissance painting of him. He was subjected to a smear campaign where they said he had sex with his mother and was homosexual, even though he had 9 children with his wife, wrote love letters and things. He wasn't a homosexual. His clan, his line, were the last true royalty of England. His son, Charles I, and grandson, Charles II, who was known as the Black Boy, well, Charles II was the last of that line, and he was beheaded. And again, here you can see the actual painting of him and the whitewashed version of him. So when he was beheaded, they put an Ashkenazi, a Nephilim line of royalty on the throne. And that's who is on the throne today. The Nephilim bloodlines are the enemy here. These people rule this world. You might recognise some of these faces.
Editor's note. White is not a skin colour. It is an exclusive membership of a secret society club. There are pale-skinned people who aren't considered white, and there are dark-skinned people who have been classified as white.
I rejected my white classification publicly for the first time in 1987, in February. A white coworker came to me and told me right after the function, he said, you have nothing to do with these people, you have a history and a culture. These people came from the jungle, you have nothing to do with them. These people lie and steal. When I see one of them in my neighborhood, I call the police.
White is a caste system, created and maintained by those who have placed themselves at the top. And while it might seem that the lighter skinned you are, the higher up the caste structure you'll be, those in the higher echelons know that it's really about bloodline and DNA. The benefits of membership seem very desirable: privilege, wealth, celebrity, power. But these worldly things that this bloodline controls are just superficial, transitory, and illusory. Nonetheless, many people think they are or want to be in the club. But as George Carlin says, that's because you can only be a full platinum member by bloodline, by virtue of having the serpent DNA. Switch on the television and you'll see others of a less pure bloodline who have managed to gain bronze or useful idiot membership. And you can fantasize that if somebody discovers that you can sing well or lie to a camera, that maybe you can upgrade to a higher degree, ignorant of the fact that they have had to prove that they're a particular type of ruthless psychopath, literally willing to sign a contract in blood and sacrifice their granny for scraps off the elite's table. The rest assume that because you look like you're a member, that you automatically are one, and so act accordingly. But you have just been brainwashed into believing that you are part of their club, in the same way that you might refer to our military or say, my team scored a goal. Well, you don't have a military, and it's not your team. You're really just pawns, supporting and perpetuating the caste system, accepting the unspoken privileges, and collaborating in the denial of the same to black people. Blissfully unaware that the real white bloodline considers you as expendable as those who you believe have a lower social status. If you're not a member of the elite families, then it doesn't matter how pale your skin is or how blonde your hair. You will never be white.
Oh, God, I love being white. I really do. Seriously, if you're not white, you're missing out, because this shit is thoroughly good. But let me be clear, by the way. I'm not saying that white people are better. I'm saying that being white is clearly better. Who could even argue? If it was an option, I would re-up every year. Oh, yeah, I'll take white again. Absolutely. I've been enjoying that. I'm going to stick with white. Thank you. Here's how great it is to be white. I could get in a time machine and go to any time, and it would be fucking awesome when I get there. That is exclusively a white privilege. Black people can't fuck with time machines. A black guy in a time machine is like, hey, anything before 1980? No, thank you. I don't want to go. But I can go to any time. The year 2? I don't even know what was happening then. But I know when I get there, welcome, we have a table right here for you, sir. Oh, thank you. Oh, it's lovely here in the year 2. I can go to any time. In the past, I don't want to go to the future and find out what happens to white people, because we're going to pay hard for this shit. You got to know that. We're not going to just fall from number 1 to 2. They're going to hold us down and fuck us in the ass forever. And we totally deserve it. But for now, whee!
You people. You're not a race. You are a virus. You destroy the world. Everything beautiful you poison. You drag us from our homes. You rape our daughters, murder our sons. You crack our spines and do all you can to break our will. You stab us. Then you put the knife in our hand and tell us it's our fault. And if you don't do it yourself, you stand by, close your eyes, and pretend there's nothing wrong. And then you pray to your God to silence our screams so that you can enjoy the happiness that we built for you with our blood. But it's not your fault. It's the only way you know how to be. And the only thing that will change anything is if another virus comes along and does to you what you do to us. And I hope that happens very soon.
We're also being preyed upon by this bloodline. Does anybody know what the most expensive substance in the world is? It's actually melanin. It costs, I think it's updated. It's updated to $396 per gram. That's 10 times the price of gold. Melanin can't be synthesized. So there's only one source of melanin, and that's in our skin. Our organs are also apparently superior to white organs. And it's said that a 140-pound black man is actually worth $28 million dead. At the same time, there are a lot of people basically adopting black children. And I've found quite a few stories like this where people adopt black children for their organs. It's also a possible reason why so many black people go missing in this country, why there are so many drive-by shootings or police shootings, because we're being preyed upon.
Body parts. They've been selling body parts. That's old. That's not new. That's why black people don't like to go to hospitals. They go to get their toes clipped, their fingernails clipped, and they wake up and their foot's gone.
They've been utilizing the organs of black people for years, the organs and the body parts and the members of African American people, and that goes back to George Washington. There's a long time myth that George Washington had wooden teeth. We've heard that myth growing up in school. The reality is George Washington did not have wooden teeth because common sense will tell you you can't put wood in your mouth, it gets wet, and wet wood is useless. What George Washington did, he had the teeth of his African slaves yanked out of their mouths, and he made dentures out of these teeth. And they're on display. His dentures are on display at museums right now. And that just goes to show the history of African people having our bodies mutilated and our members disfigured and mutilated for the betterment and benefit of the dominant society.
In America, at least 2,500 black people go missing every year. At least. Never to be found again, not killed enough, you just don't find them again. Why doesn't that number ever go down? How can you constantly have the same amount of people? Are you trying to say the same killers go out and murder the same amount of people every year? No. Somebody is taking black people off the street. There's been stories on this. Kidnapped by the government, kidnapped by organ traffickers.
Drive-by shootings is organ stealing.
I'm worth $50 million and I need a kidney. And you know, kidneys are pretty sensitive. You gotta find somebody who really got the kidney that matches yours. You think I'm gonna wait till somebody die for me to get one? If I don't get one soon, I'm gonna die. So guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna pay somebody to go research people. Okay, let's go look at all the black organ donors. Let's look at all the black people who got organ donor on their driver's license, which is why I'm not a friend of that. I say, if you wanna donate your organs, put it in your will. Say that if I die, this could go to my family, my relatives, my friends, or whomever. But when you put it on your license, I believe you make yourself a public target. And so what did they find? We got a guy in Los Angeles. He has the same blood type as you, same kidney type as you likely. He healthy though, he ain't likely to die no time soon. He don't know you, so he ain't gonna give you no organ for free. So guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna arrange a murder that makes it look like he was in a car accident. We're gonna arrange a murder that makes it look like he committed suicide. So the next thing you know, you coming out the gas station, boom, you get hit by a Mack truck, you dead, gone. You get taken to the funeral home, your family come to the funeral, they don't know that before your body got laid to rest, a little hole was poked and they pulled your kidney out.
A lot of people don't know, when you get arrested or even when you get convicted, a lot of times law enforcement or police will swab your mouth for DNA. And now they have your DNA record on file, they have your genetic information on file. And you have to understand, with law enforcement, a lot of times they'll sell your information to tabloids and, like, especially celebrities, they sell their information to tabloids and magazines and news outlets all the time. So it's not a stretch to believe that they won't use your DNA or your genetic information for nefarious reasons.
You, my son, cops come by and inform me you just been shot dead. You don't have jurisdiction over that body. That's the coroner. You can't get that body till the coroner release you. So we'll get released, we go down and pick it up, and I see all these cuts and these stitches. I just thought they was doing a routine investigation, following the family. I didn't know they took your organs. I'm under all this stress, my son is dead. Now you buried now, I can't dig you up because the court got to have permission. Most of those cases is organ stealing.
It's been known for a long time, even back in slavery times, that black organs were considered superior genetically to other folks' organs. For example, whenever there's a transplant, okay, especially when rich folks get heart transplant, liver transplant, kidney transplant, they like white, they like black organs. We had a famous case in Pennsylvania, Governor Casey, who was one of the most racist governors who ever lived back in the late 80s, early 90s. He had a heart transplant. Guess whose heart they gave him? A black person's heart.
Down in Georgia, there was a case of an African-American 17-year-old kid who was found mysteriously dead at school. He died in the gym, they did an autopsy and they buried him. His family, they weren't satisfied with the results because they still wanted to know what happened to their son. They had the body exhumed, found out that his organs were missing and his body was stuffed with newspapers, and people are still trying to find answers. The officials down there in Georgia, they act like they don't know what's going on. There was another case out here in California. A young African-American man was found dead in Death Valley in the desert All of his organs were missing. His liver, heart, lungs, kidneys, all gone. There's a case in the UK recently. A Somalian girl was brought over there for organ harvesting. They found out that they were going to harvest her organs and they stopped that. There was another case in Asian couples. They went over to Africa. They adopted a black girl. 2 weeks later, she was dead. So these cases of organ harvesting are just going on all over the world, and people are being real quiet about it.
The Rodney King riots. The cops arrested 18,213 black folks. They couldn't account for 10,000 of them.
That's what happened in New Orleans. Remember when you saw those helicopters? They were picking up all them black babies and taking them up in the helicopter. And my husband and I sit there and said, we wouldn't have sent our son with them. I don't care who they was. We all died in the water together. We wouldn't have sent our baby up there. And they never got a bunch of those children back, as we all know.
Organ harvesting in Africa, it's a business. In fact, they've set up so many sophisticated places around the so-called third world where there are nations like France, England, New Zealand, Israel. All these places now are looking in the impoverished areas because mostly in these impoverished areas like Brazil, places in South Africa, right here on this continent, wherever there's poverty, there's crime. And wherever there's crime, you know there's a lot of deaths and there's a lot of shooting.
They are killing black people for their organs. Think about it. Organs are the only commodity that people must have to live that you cannot buy in a store. So if I am sick and I need a heart, I can't buy that. And we know all the problems with the fake hearts, that they can give a pacemaker to a bad heart. But what about when the heart needs to be replaced? You gotta find a match, and it ain't none on the donor list, and I'm worth $50 million, and I could care less about black people anyway? Guess what? Somebody gonna get shot in a drive-by.
Switch over to Haiti. Jean Bellerive, at the time, he was the prime minister at the time when Haiti was hit with that earthquake that killed over 130,000 brothers and sisters down there in that island. They had a report on CNN with Jean Bellerive, and he said specifically that there was organ harvesting and child kidnapping going on.
And we have already reports of a lot of trafficking, even of organ trafficking.
Of organ trafficking?
Yeah.
Now?
Now, already.
Of the victims of the earthquake?
Yeah. So,
do you know that for sure?
Yeah, I know that for sure, and it was discussed in Montreal during the conference.
If you live in Los Angeles and you want to adopt a black child, why not get one from Los Angeles? You have every age, every skin color, every hair type, whatever you want, it's here. Because black kids are not being adopted by black people. But instead, you want to go all the way to Ethiopia and get one. You want to go all the way to Haiti and get one after the earthquake. You want to go all the way to the Middle East and get one. And East Africa and a Middle Eastern country, I believe, are the two top countries for international adoption. Why? Because they have poor supervision and tracking processes. Once you get a baby from Ethiopia, and as we know, Ethiopia is one of the poorest countries on the continent. Once you get a baby from Ethiopia and bring them back to America, the Ethiopian government and their adoption agencies really don't have the technology or the resources to follow up and see what you're doing with that child. In fact, I've read articles on it where they say that after about 6 months, we never hear from the child again or the person who adopted them.
I'm Margaret Sanger.
Margaret Sanger is the founder of Planned Parenthood.
Hello.
In the mid-1920s, Margaret Sanger spoke to a group that came to hear her in full regalia.
Eugenics means the release and cultivation of the better racial elements in our society, and the gradual suppression, elimination, and eventual extirpation of defective stocks, those human weeds which threaten the blooming of the finest flowers of American civilization. The most merciful thing that a large family does to one of its innocent members is to kill it.
She hired black ministers expressly to sell the idea.
We don't want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea, should it ever occur to any of their more rebellious members.
Surely today's Democratic Party leaders would repudiate Margaret Sanger.
I admire Margaret Sanger enormously. I am really in awe of her. And there are a lot of lessons that we can learn from her life and from the cause she launched and fought for and sacrificed so greatly.
Good afternoon, this is Autumn.
Hello, Autumn. I'm interested in making a donation today.
Fantastic.
What about abortions for the underprivileged minority groups? Would that be possible at the black community, for example?
Certainly.
It is unfortunate that Planned Parenthood has been the object of such a concerted attack.
I really face trouble with affirmative action, and I don't want my kids being disadvantaged, against black kids. I just had a baby. I want to put it in his name. And we just think, the less black kids out there, the better.
Understandable.
So I'm hoping that this situation will not further undermine the very important services that Planned Parenthood provides.
Hello, this is Sue. May I help you?
Hi, Sue. I'm interested in making a donation. Could I specify that those abortions be done for a particular minority group?
If you wish, you can.
Okay. So, for example, the black community in Tulsa, the abortions will be done specifically for the black community abortions.
Great.
Today, the vast majority of Planned Parenthood clinics are located in our neighborhood. We were tripped through a split marketing campaign, but now that that's unraveling, people are saying, wait a minute, they sell baby parts? What happened to my baby?
This is from the New York Times. These are maps of diabetes. The top map is New York City. Everybody's drinking the same drinking water. The darkest areas on the top is Harlem, where the African Americans predominate in the community. And then the Bronx, and is it Queens? I don't know New York City very well. But two other areas where minorities and poor live. Why do they have much higher rates of diabetes than the rest of the affluent part of New York City? The answer is that we discovered after Chernobyl that the state milk boards are taking the most contaminated radioactive milk from dairies near nuclear power plants, and they're shipping that into black inner city communities where it's sold in the mom and pop stores. Look at Africa. In the bottom map, it has the lowest diabetes in the world. So how can diabetes be genetic in blacks if they didn't have it in Africa? It's because U.S. national policy is to genocide the black communities with radiation.
America was always a concentration camp. There was a depopulation agenda in this world. These are the Georgia Guidestones, and on these Guidestones it actually says that to keep the human population down to 500 million, and if they're successful, you can guess what colour those 500 million will be. There's also instituted by these people down here a plan called the King Alfred Plan, which was made up after the Civil Rights Movement, that once, if it ever happened again, the black people would be rounded up and put in internment camps and exterminated. That plan was updated in 1984 by Ronald Reagan in a plan called Rex 84. So you can look those things up. Again, Genesis says that Genesis 15:13 says, "Know for a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in the land that is not theirs, and shall serve them and afflict them for 400 years." Well, slavery began in 1619. 400 years on from then is 2 years' time. the kind of proof that points to this is that the Willie Lynch letter, actually the first paragraphs of the Willie Lynch letter, it says that if you use my methods, which lynching is one of the methods, that's where the name lynching comes from. If you use my methods, you'll have a subdued slave race for 300 years. Now, he wrote that letter in 1712, so he knew that they only had a limited time for slavery. So these are the curses that are listed in Deuteronomy. Slavery and captivity, having no power to stand against our enemies, being sent back to Mizraim, Egypt, which is bondage, again by ship, exiled in the land of their enemies, scattered among all nations, a very sick and disease-stricken people, to us, at the bottom socially with other races high above them, lost the true knowledge of who they were and will be called by many scornful nicknames, kind of the nicknames that we got. Packed into prisons and jails, well, there's more of us in prison than are in college. A non-prosperous people, an oppressed people by their enemies, very religious and members of all religions. Well, that itself has been used against us, religion, and we'll show you how a little later. We are still in those punishments. We're still in slavery. The slavery has changed its form. We're no longer in chattel slavery. We're in economic slavery. 98% of your earnings disappear in taxes. Taxes on food, taxes on pretty much everything. They've used this book to enslave your mind. The New Testament, it's not part of our Bible, it's not part of our book. It's the holy book of the religion of Christianity that's been welded on to our book, and we've been told, oh, it's all one book, one whole book, read the whole thing. Well, not read the whole thing, just read that. It teaches you, well, first of all, it supplies you with a new white God, God in their image, and idols to worship, in direct contravention of the first two commandments. And it teaches you to be a good slave, obey your master, serve your master as you would serve the new Christ God, love your enemy, turn the other cheek, pay your taxes. That's slave doctrine. Jesus, he's a fabrication. The Trinity came from the pagan Trinity of Nimrod, Cerinus, and Tammuz. The cross predated Christianity. It was a cross of Tammuz. The Romans were sun worshippers. Hence, Christians worship the sun. Sun. Pope Alexander basically got Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci to paint the image of Cesare Borgia as Jesus. Cesare Borgia was a ruthless paedophile and tyrant of the crime family, the Borgias.
Yet, strangely, this very family, which would underwrite some of the world's great art, was also one of the most evil and mysterious in history.
The Borgia family has become the arch symbol of treachery, of decadence, of violence, of assassination, of carnal lust, of every manner of moral turpitude we can think of.
The Borgias' reputation for depravity is nearly unparalleled in history. Pope Alexander VI, the father of several illegitimate children, said to have concocted a deadly recipe for poison, which he routinely used to silence his enemies. Juan, his evil-tempered eldest son, believed to have ordered the execution of a dinner guest over an unintended insult. Cesare, the most skillful and vicious military tactician of his day, accused of slashing the throat of his elder brother, Juan.
Many historians have pointed out, and Guicciardini first among them, that Cesare Borgia had a motive to kill his brother because he was jealous of him, jealous of his station, jealous of his future.
The Pope, however, refused to consider that Cesare might be guilty. Perhaps he was simply unable to.
So all the allusions to this guy's, or prophecies for this guy, they all turn out to be false. If you actually study all of these prophecies that seem to lead to Jesus, they don't exist. And no matter what you call him, whether you give him a Hebrew name, Yahusha or Yeshaya or whatever, or you give him a different colour, it's still Jesus. If you don't have a different story for him, you're still worshipping this Jesus character. And if you're still worshipping Jesus Christ, then you're still a Christian. And you're still in this thing called church. Church is there to indoctrinate you into paganism. The word church comes from Circe, which is a pagan god. And it's there to keep you worshipping other gods, Jesus, and their idols. And it's stopping you from keeping the Sabbath, which is why they worship on a Sunday. Yeah? The Sabbath is a Saturday. Churches are corporations. This is a mega corporation. Yeah? Corporations' only job is to make a profit. And they profit from your tithes. Yeah? They provide you with a weekly show for 10% of your earnings. Yeah? The Old Testament, if you read it, actually tells you that tithing was about giving 10% of the food you produce to the poor and needy. Yeah? Not money to a corporation. So, here's a summary. World history is our history. Yeah? We are special. We're set apart from other nations. We're being punished for our disobedience. All the other nations in this world are confederate against us. Yeah? There's currently an imposter. Imposters reaping the benefits of pretending to be us. That's the Jewish people there in Israel right now. The New World Order agenda is about our extermination. And most importantly, we are coming to the end of our punishment. So what is it that we need to do? Well, technically, we don't need to do anything about our enemies, because it looks like the Most High is already dealing with it. This is a story from the Washington Post, just came out recently, but white deaths outnumbering white births for the first time. In fact, all across every white-controlled country, the fertility rate is below replacement rate. Now, you need 2.1 children per woman to keep the population stable. And all the countries all the white countries are running well below replacement rate for more than one generation, which means it's an exponential decline that they're in. Now, most people don't actually understand what an exponential decline is. So, if you look at it this way, if you had a jar of jelly beans and there was 1,024 jelly beans in that jar, and the first day you took one and ate it, and the second day you doubled it, and so on, doubled it every time you went to the jar, that jar will be empty in 10 days. But what day do you think it will be when that jar is half full? But it turns out it will be day 9. So if you think about it, at day 9, if you add up all the jelly beans you've eaten when you got to day 9, right, that'll add up to 512, which is half the amount. And then the next step will be that amount again. So the next step, that jar will be empty. The point is, you won't see it coming. Yeah, it's exponential decline. You don't see it coming until the very end.
Mr. President, demographers tell us that in order to sustain itself, a population needs a birth rate of 2.1 live births per woman. In the whole of Europe, the only country that is reproducing at sustainability level is Albania, or Turkey if you count Turkey as a European country. Nowhere else. Europe, including European Russia, is scheduled, according to one UN report, to lose 100 million people over the next 40 years. Germany alone is going to see a shrinkage of its population of 20 million. These are not projections about what might happen if we don't do something. If you like, there's nothing we can do about it now. The decline in birth rates has already happened. The only question is how we deal about it. Why did it come to this stage? What brought us to this pass? Well, one doesn't want to oversimplify. There's obviously a lot of things going on to do with changing working patterns, to do with the spread of contraception, to do with the different role of women in society, to do with longevity. But I wonder whether one part of the problem is the way in which the state has expanded and squeezed out the private sphere, has annexed to itself jobs and duties that were traditionally discharged within the family: childcare, education, social security. The first generation raised with cradle-to-grave welfare, in other words, to be excused the traditional responsibilities of adulthood, was also the first to give up on parenthood. And we now face a choice between demographic collapse or importing 100 million people to sustain our numbers and pay our pensions. This should be the top issue in Europe, and it's not one that we're going to address by arguing about changes.
So there's proof that they know about this situation, and you know they're worried about it. This was from the EU Parliament that was discussing this situation. But interesting point to note that he says the collapse has already happened, yeah, and it's their own agenda, their own social lifestyle that was causing their downfall. And if you caught that bit at the end, the only two choices they have is demographic collapse, complete collapse of their population, or importing 100 million people. Well, that's importing 100 million people to mix with to make sure that their population survives. So, the things that we need to do: start reading the Book of Remembrance. Start reading the book. It's an amazing book because it's like an instruction manual. It's a book of history and law. And as I said, an instruction manual. Every situation you can imagine yourself in, you'll find instructions of what to do in that book. So the first thing you've got to do is start reading the book. Second, once you've read the book, turn away from this satanic society. Right? That's what repentance is. Turning away from evil, because there's no doubt that this society is evil. Turn away from that evil and back to the laws, statutes and commandments of the Most High. That is our number one job in this world. Okay, we've got very little time now, and before the end of slavery, we have to do right by our Creator. So this is what we've got to do. Remember that we're prisoners of war in this land of captivity. Yeah, prisoners don't fight amongst themselves. They help each other. They realise they're all in the same boat together. They help each other ease their captivity. Change your mindset. You're not fighting against your brother. You're not competing with your brother. You are working with them. You're working together. Talk to your family. We are at the lowest social strata. We're doing the crappiest jobs. You know, people are struggling along and slogging away at these menial, crappy jobs, day in, day out. If you see one of your brothers or sisters working away, talk to them. You know, befriend them. Let them know that you're in solidarity with them. See how that affects their day. Yeah, Most times it makes their day that somebody's actually noticed them and wants to talk to them. Do whatever you can to help your family. Take those tithes that you give to those pastors for their next sports car. Yeah, take those tithes and give it to somebody who needs it. You know, do something to help those people that are struggling in this system that's built against us. Yeah, and if you don't want to, if you can't help somebody homeless like this, you use your job, whatever your job is. If you can use your job to help, one of your family, if you can do it without losing it, yeah, help them. Yeah, if you can get away with not charging somebody for something, let them through. Yeah, help your family. Teach those who are behind you on the path. We're all at different stages on the path. Okay, we should be in fellowship with each other. If you see somebody who's still worshipping Jesus, try and talk to them. Only 1/3 of us is going to make it through this. That's what the book says. Yeah, let's try and make sure that we're on the top end of that 1/3. Yeah, teach people what you've learned. You've been reading the book, you've been following the path. Teach those who are behind you. Most importantly, teach children who they are, who they really are, and what their job is. As the firstborn son of my family, I realised just not long ago that I've not done my job. Yeah, I should have, as the firstborn, I should have been organising my brothers and sisters. We work together. We'll all work together, pool our resources, and we'll get my little sister her first house. We'll all work together again and get my brother his first house. We'll all work together and get my sister's business up and running. Yeah, we all work together and get my brother's business up and running. That's how we should be working. Yeah, and I missed that opportunity. We're all so wrapped up in every man for himself. In this kind of rat racing, forgetting that we're in captivity, yeah, and so we leave our brothers and sisters, our real brothers and sisters, mostly, behind because we think, well, we've got to do it for ourselves. So this is what you've got to be teaching them, that we are actually royalty. We're a blessed people, but right now we're being punished by the creator of the universe. So it's not going to be a good punishment. The end of this story has already been written, and yet we win in the end. But, as I said before, there are things that we need to do, to be on the right side of it. We are the chosen people, not these guys. Thank you.
What a vibe, what a vibe.
Alright. People talk, that's what they do. They don't understand. Only still I push and go through. Yes, they laugh. They call me names, but they just don't get it. Oh, them see me, I hold my head up just the same. When them see me, them just keep on talking. I mean, I see them and just keep on walking. I got my pride, me not gonna show my bad side. Some of them see me as a big pushover. Want me feel it, I want me to keel over. Oh no, not I and I will survive. Never let them get you down. Never let them see you frown. Never let them take away your liberty. Live your life and be free. Never let them get you down. Never let them see you frown. Never let them lead you astray. Starting today, live your life your way. When you go through heartache, when you're feeling pain, when you end up in a desert. And I wonder why the hell it not rain when them pass them judgment. And every word left unseen. When them talk up the things they try to mash up your life and give you bad name. Them think you're weak, but I just saw them blunder. But mind I think that your business is under. Don't give them that power. Show them you can be stronger. Just take up yourself and make the whole of them wonder. Oh, you get up when them a try keep you under. Don't believe their lies. Show them that you will rise. Never let them get you down. Never let them see you frown. Never let them take away your liberty. Live your life and be free. Never let them get you down. Never let them see you frown. Never let them lead you astray. Starting today, live your life your way. I say, people talk. That's what they do. Yeah. They don't understand how we still are push and go through. Yes, they laugh when I do. They call me names, but they just don't get it. Or them see me, I hold my head up just the same. When them see me, them just keep on talking. I mean, I see them, I just keep on walking. I got my pride. Me nah go show my bad side. Some of them see me as a big pushover. Want me to that I want me to kill over. Oh no, not I. I and I will survive.